Okay, so now I want to start sharing more techniques for nakshatras. So the two of the really coolest techniques that I want to go into before going into the Tarabala stuff is the idea of the Dhatu, Mula, and Jeeva classifications that I brought up at the beginning of the course and have been referring back to, and the idea of the Deva, Manusha, and Rakshasa classifications. You can do a lot with these. The Dhatu, Mula, and Jiva is like pretty much like completely ignored in the modern day working with nakshatras. And so when you read books about nakshatras or study, you just get overwhelmed by all this myth and jargon and stuff. And it becomes kind of difficult to know to think of it. But if you can stick to these classifications, you have sort of like a left brain practical classification organizational like anchor to anchor your mind to, and then all that other stuff kind of like wraps around it and makes more sense as we've been explaining, and I hope it's been making sense to you guys. So it is time to go into that more. Okay, so the Dhatu Mula Jiva thing, I I learned about this long ago, and so I've attached two much older classes on this from like 2017 when I had much less good audio and video recording. I was very young. So you can check those out for like archival purposes. And I do suggest it. But I'm going to go over this and kind of like redo it and be reintroducing these ideas with all the new insights that I've learned in since those since 2017. So, in a nutshell, the thing to think about with this is like Ketu in a Dhatu, Mula, or Jiva basically formulates this certain type of like security paradigm of this is what I need to feel okay. And the person, as everything with K2, it's like we tend to be overdoing it and get too fixated on it and need to be reminded to try Rahu, or eventually that K2 thing frustrates us so much that we're forced to go and do the Rahu thing. And so when it comes to nakshatras, if Ketu's in, say, a Dhatu, Rahu will always be in a Jiva or Mula. It will not be in the same one. And so it's really cool because it'll be in a different one. So if you have like Ketu in a Jiva nakshatra, you'll always be behaving in a certain way, which is that Jiva way, which is like, I need to be, like territorial, like a Jiva type being. When really you need to, as a counselor, you can advise this client to shift towards trying the Rahu approach, which is either going to be in a Dhatu or a Mula nakshatra, and try, if it's Mula, being more sensitive, more relationship, more plant-like, and if it's Dhatu, be more stone-like, more hardier, bear the pressure better, get stronger and more structure, more supported. So this is really, really cool and really, really useful. One of the best techniques I've found to work with nakshatras. Um, so I'm gonna give examples of that a lot more from here on out. And so let me just elaborate more on this. So the Dhatu stars, Dhatu represents mineral or constituent attribute, right? Like we already, like I've already explained. If you refer back to the manual, here I'll share the screen. Dhatu stars: Ashwini, Rohini, Punarvasu, Magha, Hasta, Vishaka, Mula, Shravana, Purva Bhadrapada. They go in an order. It goes Dhatu, Mula, Jiva, Dhatu, Mula, Jiva. So you can always just figure out what any of the others are if you know what one of them is. Dhatu means a layer, a stratum, a stone, a mineral, constituent part. Um, it refers to like a basic ingredient or building block of life. In Ayurveda, the word dhatu is used to refer to the tissues. Remember this, the different tissues in the body. Um, the dhatu stars are like this. They want to bear pressure, just like a stone. If you're walking down the path of your life and you step on a stone, it either has to just bear the pressure or just crumble apart. And so when you have Ketu and a Dhatu star, you feel like you need to just bear this pressure all the time, or you'll just crumble. Or you seek the support of others who can help you bear this pressure, especially if it's in an air sign or in the seventh or something like that. or you follow others, like you need others to support you, you know, or you always feel like you need to support others when you maybe don't. And you're like, you'll notice these people are like bearing too much pressure and they fall prey to depression a lot because of this. And the Dhatu stars are the most just like inert and static, like a stone. And so they need more liveliness in their life. So if you have Ketu and a Dhatu and Rahu and a Mula, you need more like emotional intelligence, more liveliness. You need to have more plants in your life. Mula means roots and refers to plants, plant life. You need more life that has roots. And focus more on environments and where to plant your roots and everything. If the Rahu's in a Jiva, you'll need to be more human-like and become more alive and deal with confrontation, fight and kill and battle and do all these things that human or animals do. Eat more, even that. Um, so yeah, another quality of these stars, okay, let me make sure I read all this because it's all very important. Um, they can be more consistent and responsible stars, more stimulating on a daily basis, but not as like surprising or spontaneous. These stars are rooted or coupled, as Vishaka is described to be one of these stars. Mula, another star, refers to a root, a thing very grounded and solid, but Mula is not a Mula nakshatra. It's actually Dhatu, which is confusing, I know. But these are like more kind of like solid, heavy anchored stars, you could say. So they're like locked in. They're like fixed signs, you could say, when it comes to signs. They're more stable and more fundamental and more like basic, like how fundamental building blocks of chemistry are like elements, dhatu. You see, they love chemistry. They love that type of, they love to think scientifically. Um, and they're more interested in things than in relationships or people. So dhatu refers to stuff, tissues, elements, mineral ingredients, rather than to people or plants. You see, so they're more interested in like, oh, like astronomy and the, just like the constituent attributes of planets, all these things, like science. Um, and they're more into materials and stuff than the other two and how to work with it and create even more stuff because the Dhatu stars are all also Rajas and Karma and Brahma stars. So they're about like creating like Brahma and creating karmas. So that's all the Dhatu stars. So like I said, Purva Bhadrapada, that's a very the show Breaking Bad has a ton of that Purva Bhadrapada influence from the creator Vince Gilligan and also the actor that played Walter White. I forget his name right now, Bryan Cranston. They both have a ton of Purva Bhadrapada, and this show is like chemistry. Like it starts out with like chemistry symbols, the periodic table. It's like all Dhatu, and the character Walter White, he's like this psychopath that like just kind of like intellectualizes everything and is like, you know, chemistry. And he's at like when he's getting cancer, he's diagnosed with cancer, but he's just like thinking very detached about chemicals and things like that. So it's just a good example if you ever saw that show. Now the Mula stars. Mula means root and refers to the plant kingdom. So just as Dhatu refers to the mineral, crystal, stone, or gaseous kingdom of life, the and the Jiva refers to the human and animal kingdom, the Mula stars are about environments. That's a really key point. And they make one thrive or wilt based on your environment and the relationships you're experiencing as a result. And so these, if you have Rahu in a Mula star, you need to focus more on your environment and move more and change more until you get into the right environment. Um, if you have Ketu there, you can have like obstacles with your environment, almost need to be a little bit more detached from it. Um, K2 in a Mula star, it's like you're too sensitive. It's like a plant. It's like, oh, you move me too much away from light, now I'm wilting. You move me over here, now it's too much light. It's like everything is too sensitive for K2 and Mula people, and they need to become more like the Jiva or the Dhatu energy. Um, so it's like it says here in this little metaphor thing, think about walking down a path in your life. If you come across a Dhatu, Mula, or a Jiva, let's say if you step on a stone, it either has to bear the pressure or it has to just crumble. Like if you step on If you step on a stone, it's just going to bear that pressure or crumble. If you step on a plant, it's going to die, so it's going to learn to grow away from the path of you. You see, that's this Mula person just going around the rock, avoiding confrontation, and it's going to keep growing elsewhere. And that's what these stars are all about. These stars help us to be receptive to what is happening, and they help us to be more sensitive to what's happening and either need to make a change or keep thriving based on that environment. As a result, we can change course due to this new sensory input. And so these are more like adapting, almost more like moon, like you could say. These are like the maybe dual or chara type changing rashis. And these stars are very, because remember it's Mula and it's Tamasic and it's Boga, which is like pleasure and sensation and curves and things, and then it's Vishnu. And so these stars are all about like being more subjective, more impressionistic, more right brain, more dreamy, more pleasure oriented, more feeling oriented, and more perceptive, more sensual, more sexual, and more relationship oriented stars. So just think about plants. There's very sensitive and they're always growing, and that's how these stars are meant to be. And they're non-linear and more subtle, whereas the Dhatus are very linear. So like how Mrigashira is seen as a gentle deer, it's one of these stars. It was originally called Invaka, which means a subtle, gentle request. It conveys a sense of intimacy. So these are the most intimate stars. And then the Jiva means a living being and refers to an animal or a human. And this also refers to the human kingdom. So let's imagine walking on a path and coming to step on a living animal or a living human being. That just as with like, the stone or the plant, you step on them, there's a different outcome. The the animal is going to respond very differently. Imagine if you step on a snake, it's either going to hiss at you or run away, you know? So the Jiva, the animal nakshatras, are all about the fight for territory and the idea of either submitting or dominating, and basically the consciousness of hierarchy. And they are the highest consciousness as well. Um, so the Jiva nakshatras are also Nasha, which means destruction or loss, and Shiva, you see, but they're sattva, so they're like the most inspired and the highest consciousness, but they are actually most destructive stars as well. Um, and this is just like the key quality though is the hierarchy, I would say, and territorialness and submitting or dominating and know where the power and everything is at. That's what all of nature's doing. And these stars are therefore more competitive because they're more aware of the hierarchy. Women with these stars use their sexuality to move up in the world so much more noticeably. Um, uh, these are also the hungriest stars, because animals are of the fire element and have to eat the most, you know? Um, and they're more individual. They're the most individualized of these three groups, just like how humans are far more individualized than stones and plants, which are also individual. But like each diamond has the same qualities and is reliable in the same ways, but each human is not really reliable in the same ways, right? So that's kind of how you should think of the difference of these stars. Um, and the Mula stars are sort of like in the middle of that, where they have like some individuality and some consistency. But these Jiva stars are the most individual, and have such unique qualities. So if you work with this, it's really, really fascinating. When we get like Ketu and Rahu show our deepest wounds in life. And so planets in these categories, not just Ketu and Rahu, all of them have this impact, but you especially find that when Ketu is in a Dhatu, Mula, or Jiva nakshatra, it especially makes a big impact on your whole life and your whole security paradigm. And Ketu is where we go when life gets tough for us, right? And so that Ketu nakshatra is something we're very comfortable with, even if it's a cruel one. We'll think it's normal to go back to that all the time, you see? So it's really helpful to know about this, because when we're hit with traumatic events, um, if you have that Ketu and Dhatu, you'll just try to bear the pressure like a stone, and kind of shut down in life. or seek support from others that can help you bear that pressure. The Ketu and the Mula is the type that's gonna just with like grow away from it, sort of, and shift like how plants shift, and have a tough time being consistent because eventually everything gets too tough, you see? And the Lord of Ketu, if it's in good or bad avastas, determines how well one will do this too. If it's in bad avastas, the native with the Ketu and Mula will get hit with the slightest difficulty and be like, oh, it's too cold in here. I have to leave. Like, and then miss out on some important experience. You see, when they just need to be a little bit tougher and hardier if they had Rahu and a Dhatu star. Um, so it's like, and then the type of person who's always like blaming the environments that they're in, that can be a Ketu and a Mula type of person. Or just who's just complaining too much about the slightest little traumas. Um, when they need to just kind of get hardier, or adopt that Rahu approach to find the right environment. If Ketu's in a Jeeva nakshatra, one will tend to approach life in this more territorial way and always see life through a lens of submitting or dominating when they actually need to let go of that and see everyone in a more egalitarian, comrade type of sense. I'm growing with all my friends together towards a goal. So I hope that that makes sense. Okay, I'm just going to go through these. I already touched on some of these, but just to make sure I don't miss out on any of these important qualities. When you see Ketu in a Dhatu nakshatra, like say Ketu in Hasta, which it's in right now, one can be most easily depressed again, or need that support structure. If it's in Libra too, it's in a relationship. One feels that they just can't bear the pressure of life. Or if they just can, then everything will be okay. But they tend to try too hard to just bear pressure and rely on things to support them, which can even lead to addictions. You see this a lot, actually, rather than just change environments or grow around the pressure, or step up and confront the situation head on, like Jeeva. Ketu and Mula, they just need, they just tend to be too attached to trying to find the right environment to grow in, or tend to be too attached to like certain needs and everything need to be just right when they're just being too sensitive, kind of. And they have to learn to get a little bit hardier and tougher. Ketu and Jiva, relying too much on your place in the hierarchy, relying too much on like primal animalistic approaches to life as well. Like people that feel they have to eat meat, you know what I mean? Like I put that in there. Even if they're a healthy meat eater, they if they have Ketu and Jiva, they will feel like they have to eat meat no matter what. Even if they're like super health freak, you'll see this all the time. Because it's just this subconscious paradigm from many lives. Um, or people that are like really sexual, like overly flirtatious all the time. You'll see that a lot, especially with women like who have learned to use that to get ahead in life, but not learn to use other skills, like maybe their intelligence or other skills. You see, like, there's this weird thing in my head. Okay. Yeah. All right. Anyways, so Rahu and a Dhatu, one needs to be more like a stone, bearing pressure more easily, not complaining, being more stoic, needs to grow into a person who's more able to bear that pressure in life. And you need to learn to get the right support to bear the pressure in life and just put the time in and build up the things indicated by Rahu's placement over time and consistently support that Rahu through your actions over time. And I would also add right now, like make sure be careful who you're supporting and who's supporting you, kind of in a sense, like okay. And then Rahu and Mula, one needs to develop more of this sensitivity, more plant-like energy, more right brain energy, more aesthetic colors. Plant therapy is helpful, color therapy, music therapy, sound therapy, right brain things. One needs to recognize the phase of growth that they're in. And if Rahu's in a Mula, they need to change environments often to get the right resources and nutrients to thrive. And then Rahu and Jiva, one needs to be more comfortable with confrontation and with hierarchy. And everything in nature has a hierarchy to it. And one must be more comfortable with where one is at in the hierarchy, or else just try harder to get up. So that's sort of a simple breakdown. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this really cool Rumi quote. This is a whole deeper level of seeing this Dhatu Mula Jiva. Look, oh, and you'll notice like all throughout the ancient, even Greek and even esoteric Western stuff, they have this weird category of plant, mineral, and human life, because that's really like one of the simplest ways to break down creation is it falls in one of these categories. And so Rumi, the perfect master, once said, consciousness sleeps in minerals, dreams in plants, and becomes self-aware in humans. That's what he just taught us. That was the secret that explained to me all of this Dhatu Mula Jiva stuff. Consciousness sleeps in Dhatu, it dreams in Mula, and it becomes self-aware in Jiva, the Shiva stars. Perfect. Okay. Okay, so that's just a good breakdown of that. So now from here on forth, I'm going to focus more a lot on when I give examples of the Ketu in each nakshatra, and then go and watch those other older videos. You'll hear a lot of this repeated, but you'll see more examples. If you want to see more examples of this playing out, go and watch those two older videos that I've added to this course, and forgive me for the poor audio. Okay, thanks you guys.